Hello, everyone. Welcome to mini episode 1881 of the FDH Lounge. You have with you here today two of your favorite FDH Lounge dignitaries, original FDH Lounge dignitaries, Rick Morris and Chris Galloway. We are here for the 2025 NFL midseason breakdown. And to lead off, Chris, I would say it must be kismet having you on the show here for 1881. That, of course, being the year that James Garfield became president of the United States. And here you and I are doing a podcast, mini episode number 1881. It's fate, my friend.
Home county. And have you started to watch the Netflix show on James Garfield that they put out?
Haven't seen it yet. Do you recommend
Death by Lightning?
Okay.
They've just started releasing the episodes. It's like a mini series, and I haven't seen it yet, but my understanding is it's tremendous. From the folks that I know that have seen parts of it. I know some folks that went to the premiere, if you will, of the first episode in Hiram.
Okay.
Where, of course, at Hiram College, Garfield was a professor at one time. So you've got to check it out. Death by Lightning. It's on Netflix and has a lot of big stars in it.
Okay. All right, I will have to watch that. And then Hiram College, of course, that famously named for a notable talk show caller in the history of Cleveland sports, I believe, right? Isn't that where they got the name?
No, it is not.
It's not named after that guy? Okay, all right.
He doesn't. And also, fun fact, I am related to James Garfield.
Are you? Okay. That's. I think I remember you mentioning that once. I know you have an interest in the man. Okay.
His mother's sister, so his aunt, is one of my great grandmothers.
Really? Okay. Okay. A somewhat distant relation here to President James Garfield. Well, we are honoring him with our great football podcast here today. I mean, that's a little bit of a reach, but, not the first one I've done, and it won't be the last. But what I'm going to bring up here right now is a little something to check out in terms of you can find us available on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com. It is our 2025 FDH NFL midseason breakdown. So this statistical index here, it's got our power rankings in the first column, but then everything else is lumped in there as well. A host of offensive and defensive statistics. Some are advanced statistics, some are not. It's just sort of our casserole formula that we've used the last couple of years. And it does show, again, an awful lot of surprises here because the fact that one of the likeliest Super Bowl combinations, according to this right now here, it would be number 2 and number 3 on the list here in the rankings, Seattle and Indianapolis. And of course, we all saw that coming back in August, did we not, Chris?
Absolutely. I mean, as you and I predicted. No. Well, but I do see at the top of that list, there are some championship level teams that we thought would be there for the AFC and NFC championship game. But, every year there are surprises. We talk about it every preseason is who are the teams that are making the playoffs that no one expected that didn't the year before? Who are the teams that are dropping out? Every year there is some movement there, and you try to figure out who it's going to be, based on off season and personnel moves, and sometimes we're just flat out wrong.
Yeah, and I have to say, and this is not, I'll lead off with a note of lack of humility before I get into the humility, that generally speaking, when I'm grading the rosters coming into a season, I'm generally not as nearly as wrong as I was about Seattle, because a number of things that I classified as holes, particularly on defense, they had guys that they were confident in. I think a number of young guys, and generally speaking, it's one of these things, and I think a lot of people had them set for somewhat of a down year. I am a huge Mike Macdonald guy, though. So I said, I think he provides a floor to like how bad they can be. I think I picked them for like 7 wins, but I said they would be worse than that if it wasn't for Mike Macdonald. So I was way off on that because, again, what I saw as being holes, they had guys that they were confident in defensively, and defensively they have been very, very, very strong. offensively, it has worked well. I wasn't one of the folks who was second guessing getting rid of Geno Smith for Sam Darnold. I wasn't sure how much of a boost it would give necessarily, but I didn't think it was a downgrade at all. I've always been a Sam Darnold guy. But again, one of the big stories of the first half of the season is the absolute plethora of MVP candidates. And again, most years, almost all years these days, it goes to a quarterback. The only guy who it seems like could get in the way of that potentially might be Jonathan Taylor. And we'll have to see how that plays out. But so the rest of these guys are going to fall back into the offensive player of the year bin. But two very, very, very strong contenders for them to go along with a strong defense. It is a little bit of a top-heavy offense, but the way that Darnold has played and JSN leveling up to become a true number one level player in the league. And not that fantasy is the end all and be all of the analysis that we do, but if somebody is a lock as a number one fantasy wide receiver, that means they're a franchise player, and that's the level that JSN is on right now. So Seattle has managed largely on the backs of those two guys offensively, and then with a defense that's better than I thought it was going to be, and a lot of people thought that it could be. And again, Mike Macdonald, that was his forte. That's what he brought over from Baltimore, was the reputation as a defensive genius, and we're seeing it there. And they're in a dogfight with the Rams to win the NFC West. And again, whoever doesn't win is going to be the world's most dangerous number 5 seed ever.
Exactly. And I know I was a little higher on the Seahawks than you were. But I also didn't see this leap coming. There were
No.
people that did. I mean, you and I like to criticize him from time to time, but give him his kudos on this one. I mean, Colin Cowherd was very high on the Seahawks. I think he picked them to win that division.
Okay.
And so there's somebody that's a national person who seemed to be dialed in on it. And again, like you and I, a big Sam Darnold fan. How Darnold has resurrected his career, and I think that's the narrative right now of this season, of players that have been in the league, struggled, that are resurrecting their careers in that sort of second round of their career, that second contract, if you will, that are sort of that a lot of people, some of them quarterbacks like Darnold, Baker Mayfield, others that thought that they were busts, sort of coming, resurrecting their career. There's a lot of that going on right now in a number of different positions. I think that's some ways the more interesting storyline. It does speak to the NFL in terms of coaching and development and patience, right?
Right.
And it does in the case of guys like Darnold and Mayfield, it does speak a lot to culture, how it matters, and all the rest of that in terms of organizations. But as far as MVP goes, I mean, there are a number of candidates. You've mentioned some. Mayfield's another. I would even throw in, and again, from a record and playing standpoint, like I could even throw in Lamar Jackson by saying the Ravens were dead and buried unless he plays.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't play, the Ravens are just dead and buried.
Right.
Yeah, again, proving that he is, and every year should be an MVP consideration. Um, in some ways, what Flacco is doing with Cincinnati, you would say, well, how important is Joe Burrow? Uh, so I would say that those things also illustrate that symbiotic relationship that's important between a good wide receiver and a quarterback who can get him the ball, right?
Yep.
You know, Darnold is elevating JSN
Mm-hmm.
because he's getting him the ball. I think that's why we're seeing that for the first time.
Yeah.
And there are wide receivers that have the ability to elevate their quarterbacks, and that's always been the secret to success. I mean, we were talking about overrated quarterbacks before we started filming. Michael Irvin, I've always believed elevated Troy Aikman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just how it is. And sometimes there are quarterbacks who elevate wide receivers. I mean, Tom Brady did it his entire career. Tom Brady made a lot of wide receivers look great, and then they went to other teams, and you were like, I'm sorry, is this the same guy? Well, no, because he didn't have Tom Brady throwing him to him. So your points about Seattle are spot on. Darnold has salvaged his career with good coaching, good culture, shows in his experience now after all these years of struggling is showing that that he can be a top 10 NFL quarterback, something that you and I thought coming out of USC he was going to be.
Yep. Absolutely. We did see that in him. And what's interesting is, and again, I don't know if this is another situation where you would say that it's the quarterback helping to raise the level or not, but the guy that to me is the runaway candidate for rookie of the year is Igbuka down in Tampa Bay, along with JSN, a product of one of the greatest positional factories. Maybe it's time to say the greatest positional factory in the history of the sport. I mean, Penn State back in the day used to be linebacker U. I'm sure LSU's got its hand in the air right now saying, what about our wide receivers? Although I can tell you from a fantasy perspective, from sad personal experience this year, Brian Thomas Jr. is mitigating against that to some degree. But the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr., even though he has been in a little bit of a disappointing year, again, is no better than the third best Ohio State wide receiver in the league right now, is quite a testament to the way that JSN and Igbuka are playing. And they needed to rely on Igbuka even quicker than they thought that they would. Between the injuries to Evans and the ongoing situation with Godwin, he's not the luxury third receiver they drafted him as. He's been a necessity towards keeping them at the top of the league, and he's done just that.
Offensive rookie of the year right now. It's stunning to what a factory Ohio State has become on producing wide receivers. I mean, if you're an NFL team in need of a wide receiver, how do you not begin your search every draft season right there in that position group by scouting that group, right? I mean, you're seeing it right now with Tate at Ohio State.
Yep,
You
leveling
have
up.
people saying like, well, we could get Tate, around 20th. And it's like, he's not going to be there at 20th.
No.
He's going to be drafted in the top 15 because maybe top 12 because of, to your point, of what those other wide receivers are doing.
Yeah.
Those other wide receivers and Tate's own tape is going to dictate it. But those other wide receivers that are in the league right now are going to get him paid even more so than his own tape.
Yep. And by the way, Jeremiah Smith might be the best of them. Yeah. Jeremiah Smith might be the best of them. I mean, he can't even come out this year. It'll take him another year to come out.
That's right. And I mean, look, there are NFL teams like the Cleveland Browns who would dump their entire receiving corps right now for Ohio State.
Yes.
I mean, and not just Cleveland. I mean, there are other teams too.
Sure.
That would just be like, nope, we would take we would take the whole room over what we have right now.
Oh, absolutely. No question about that.
So to your point, Ohio State has certainly become wide receiver U. When the day comes when Brian Hartline finally decides to move on to be a head coach, that is going to be a tough day for Ohio State.
Yeah, at Penn State, maybe.
We're not. Well, I mean, if I'm Penn State, how do you not think about that as a possibility? And I know we're not doing a college football show, but
that's true.
Hartline would be on my short list if I was Penn State. He'd be on my 5.
Well, and the funny thing is, you say that, but it's a look down the league at the NFL in the second half of the decade. Because if anything disrupts the status quo here, Brian Hartline at Ohio State, then that throws into question everything that we think that we know. Does Penn State become the new cradle of wide receivers? Is Ohio State, they're going to have a fall off, but how big is it going to be? So you say that it's a college question, but it's also a long-term pro question because of the importance of Ohio State wide receivers to the future of the league. So it's something to keep an eye on as far as the pipeline goes. But I think in looking at this here, the team that's number one in the overall rankings that came out here in our statistical formula, you said at the beginning of the year, and I got to give you credit because I didn't necessarily see it being the case, but that the Rams, if Stafford could hold up, and maybe they were doing a little bit of a kayfabe situation there about how bad the back was, but I mean, Matthew Stafford is playing the best football of his career. And when I said earlier in the show, there's a plethora of MVP candidates right now, he's among them. And he's close to being he's borderline at the very least as far as being an every week fantasy starter, which he's always been a QB2 pretty much throughout his career in that regard. Not that he's been bad statistically, but I mean, he's better statistically than he generally is. He's so much key to helping the team win. Again, when I talk about MVP candidates, guys who won't get it, but might just slide back into the offensive player of the year conversation, Puka Nacua, if his health holds up over the course of the second half of the season, we have to see how that plays out. But the Rams are a legitimate Super Bowl contender that I saw as being a little bit more fringe, and you, to your credit, saw as being legit if Stafford was going to hold up physically.
They would do. And again, I continue to worry about the health of Nakua and Stafford. It's like that train could go off the tracks really quick if injuries continue to pile up on that Rams roster. I had them in the NFC Championship game. I felt that they are just as good as in terms of the Eagles and the Packers, who I had sort of right there as well. Competing at that. So, Sean McVay is a wizard. He's a great coach. In some ways I'm more impressed by how they're able to just take it feels like anybody and make that defense work. That in some ways, but to your point, Stafford is having a great season. I do worry second half now, like it's a long season, older players with health issues. You do worry about there being a potential issue there. Same thing with their skill position players. But if they can stay on the field, man, the Rams can beat anybody.
Yeah.
And if they can find a way to get that number one seed and not have to go to Green Bay or Philly or someplace like that, which I thought they might have to, and they get to play, they get a first round bye and they get to play in LA, boy, they may just be on their way to the Super Bowl.
They might be. But what mitigates against them is playing in what is arguably football's toughest division. Again, the Cardinals kind of bringing it down a little bit there. Sorry, FDH Lounge dignitary Derek Allen, but it is true. The 49ers are kind of a Jekyll and Hyde.
You play in the toughest division, you're ready for the playoffs. I mean,
yeah.
if you manage to come out and be a number one seed out of that division, you've got to make them at that point the odds-on favorites to get to the Super Bowl.
You do indeed, but that's where I'm saying getting the number one seed, that could get in the way of that, and that's where all things being equal, and I'd said at the beginning of the year, Green Bay to win the NFC Championship game at Philadelphia. They, of course, play this Monday night as we're recording this here, so it will be a preview potentially of that game. That's a situation where of those three teams, and four if we include Seattle in the mix, Philadelphia, just based on the division that they play in, you have to like their odds the best. Because while the NFC North is arguably not as tough as it was a year ago, although you could say, Minnesota has slackened a bit, but the Bears have risen up, so maybe it kind of evens out a little bit. I don't know. But the NFC East has just completely fallen apart. Washington has just they've receded more than I thought they were going to. Of course, the injury at quarterback doesn't make things any easier. The Giants had a glimmer there for like 2 weeks or so of what you thought they were going to be before injuries got in the way of that. Dallas has been maybe a little bit better than we thought they were going to be, but then basically stepping on their Johnsons on the Monday night game, I think kind of probably sealed their fate. They couldn't even beat Arizona. So I think of all these teams here, Philadelphia's got the easiest path. We'll have to see how much that matters. We'll have to see how much, if that means anything and what they're able to do in the head-to-head against Green Bay, which to me is clearly like one of the games of the year, one of the 2 or 3 games of the year.
Is because I had my NFC Championship prediction was the Rams having to go to Green Bay, and that I thought Green Bay would go to the Super Bowl because they would be at home.
Mm-hmm.
And Green Bay hasn't looked great either, right? They're winning games, but they haven't looked great. in some ways, them and Buffalo, my two picks for the Super Bowl, are having a similar season, right? There's moments where you go, "Oh, there it is," and then there's games where you're like, "What is happening?" So they seem to this point in the season, they both seem to be, by and large moving forward, right? But you have a lot of questions about the Packers and the Bills, um, just because at moments you're like, "What is happening with this team?" But you're right, Philly, because of the schedule, because again, I thought the Commanders would fall back. They have, and obviously Daniels' injuries is really, crushing that. The wide receiver injuries. Um, the Dallas, I thought Dallas was going to go to hell in a handbasket, and they may still in the second half if they look like they're fading. That team has a tremendous ability to quit. And then the Giants, yeah, I mean the Giants are. I made a bold prediction there. Like you said, there were a couple of games in a row where they looked like the Giants. I was wildly predicting we might see, and then it's proven not to be the case. I still think that defense is pretty good, but they're still a mess on the offensive side of the ball. So yeah, no, I mean Philly's got they have sort of the inside shot to get that number one seed right now, but I don't know. The Rams are really interesting to me in terms of that. I mean, it's right now. If you ask me, it's Seattle Rams or Philly. You're 100% right about that. One of those teams is going to end up getting it, I think.
I still think Green Bay is in that mix. We'll see what they can do against Philly. That's obviously a game where they have more to prove than does Philly. Duh. When you're playing the defending Super Bowl champions, so we'll have to see how that one plays out. I thought Washington was going to reseed as well, but I had them as a wild card team. I thought they were still going to be in the playoffs. It just ends up being worse than I thought. And by the way, as far as the Giants go, again, in fairness, at this point, no Neighbors, no Scatabo. For anybody who's like, well, they still have Tyrone Tracy. They drafted Scatabo for a reason. And you saw what the reason was, and now he's not there anymore. Very gruesome injury, but they got their guy in Jackson Dart. I mean, that's the whole thing here, too. And that, like, we talked before about, systems as far as draft a wide receiver out of Ohio State. That applies for pretty much any team in the league. If you're the Giants, always pin your hopes on whoever the belle of the ball at Mississippi is at the moment. Make that guy your next quarterback the next time you have to go draft one, Chris.
Right. Seems to be working out for him.
Yeah.
And again, I think a lot of us liked Jackson Dart. There were just some obvious concerns about him, but it was whether or not some of that some of that turnover prone down the field in between his ears would translate just because of the offense that he ran at Ole Miss. But I the coaches there seem to be doing a good job with him. So the Giants appear to have their guy moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Congrats to them. There's plenty of franchises that still can't get it right.
Yeah. We know a few. Yeah, we clearly know a few. And, in the one of them might reside potentially, hypothetically, in the AFC. But looking at the AFC and excluding that team and others from consideration here, we talked briefly before and talking about the surprise teams, Indianapolis, Danny Dimes. I mean, that's one of the most shocking things to me. I've been a Danny Dimes doubter from day one. But again, he and Darnold both having a cup of coffee in Minnesota under O'Connell there, it kind of makes you wonder, if that brief stop along the way kind of helped flick the switch. Shane Steichen is obviously a very good head coach, an offensive-minded coach as well. Got to give him credit for that. You've got, again, you were talking about Buffalo before as far as a team that's always lingering around the very top end of the AFC. Baltimore, not so much because their defense has just been piss at this point. But they get Lamar Jackson back. It's arguably the worst division in football. Can they run down the lucky as hell Squealers? I think that they can. whoever I think wins that division is going to be facing a nightmare against the number 5 seed and might be out pretty quickly, even if it's Baltimore, because of their defense just being so atrocious at this point. You've got Kansas City, which through 2 weeks, people were like, is this the end of the era? Which was obviously woefully premature. But you get things going again here. Rashee Rice comes back. The offense looks the way that they've wanted it to look for the first time in probably about 2 years at minimum. The LA Chargers, who I said at the beginning of the year were going to level up, won the game in Brazil, kind of showed what I was talking about there, but you lose your bookend left tackles. All of a sudden, things get a little bit more difficult there. So people might tend to say same old Chargers if they end up where they might end up. But, had we seen them with a full offensive line, it's too early to say. We may never have known what happened with them there, but it does make you wonder, had they held up.
And yet the Chargers have won their last 2 games.
They have, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to say about coaching, damn it. I mean, the Chargers just keep getting decimated by injuries, and yet they're still right there hanging in there at 6-3.
They are.
They've won 2 in a row. It's like, and I know teams that would absolutely fold it in and quit with the injuries that the Chargers have had.
Yeah.
So, it's hats off to, Harbaugh. Because, say what you will about him, and we can all say lots of things about him. The guy knows how to coach.
He's getting the most out of that team there, and yet they and the Kansas City Chiefs are, in the parlance of pro wrestling, looking up at the lights right now, because you got Denver in first place. And yet it's one of those situations where, again, you look at how they're playing defensively versus how they're playing offensively. And you've got the team that I picked in a shocker to win the AFC this year, Houston, a team which actually showed up, very well, especially in the advanced statistics when I ran the numbers here. A team that is, if you believe them, tied for the 9th best team in the league right now. Even though I only had them 18th in my own power rankings, there was a little bit of a gap there. And you look at it and it's like, I'm not being a bitterman about the way that my prediction went out, but it's like, is Denver like the alternate universe Houston right now? Because you look at it too, those 2 great defenses, and somehow Denver's getting away with it offensively, and Houston's not. And Denver, again, and no matter how dog crap the team Denver plays, they always win like 17-16 or something like that. They're not beating anybody convincingly. So it's like, I'm almost kind of wondering where, like, in an alternate universe, is Houston doing what Denver's doing right now and only having 2 losses at this point in the season? Because they remind me a lot of each other.
To your point, I don't understand how the Broncos have won 7 straight.
Right.
Like, it's sort of mind-boggling. They should not have even beaten the Jets in London or Germany or wherever the hell they were.
Right.
I'm with you. You look at point differential and you talk about the challenges on offense and the quality of the defense. The Broncos are 8-2 with a 62-point differential. And the Texans are 3-5, but they're plus 47 in points.
Yeah.
You don't see a team normally with a losing record, under 400 with a point differential, reaching almost 50 points.
Yeah.
To your point, Houston, I can see statistically how they would grade out higher than what that record is doing. But at the end of the day, what's the old adage, Rick, right? You are your record.
That is true.
And so, I don't know what Houston's schedule looks like. I'd have to pull it up to see if they can sort of surge, but I don't see them catching the Colts because they seem to be pretty dialed in behind Danny Dimes, that running game. They gave Jones a better line and a better running game than New York did, and a coach that was able to fit his skill set better.
Yeah.
So then we're all like, oh, it's so shocking. Well, it's like the kid did have some skills, right? He did take the Giants to the playoffs 2 years ago. right? Wasn't it 2
Yeah.
years ago or was it 3 years ago?
3 years ago, it's
Losing track.
22.
Yeah, 3
Yeah.
years ago. Got a win in Minnesota. So we saw glimpses that the kid could do stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and so he goes to a team with a better offensive line, with a run game, and a coach that can fit his skill set better. And lo and behold, he's excelling and the team is winning.
That is true, yeah, and that's where. Now, I will say that for what you said about Danny Dimes there, as far as the Colts rallying behind him, that's one of those things where 2 months ago, if we had audio of you saying that, I would be like, well, obviously somebody is using AI to discredit my man, and he would never actually say those things. But the way that the first half of the season played out, you actually did say that. You actually do mean that, and I understand why. And I'm the world's biggest Danny Dimes skeptic. But I can only go by what he's doing right now, and he's getting the job done. He really is. By the way, and as far as Houston, as I'm pulling up again here, the 2025 FDH NFL midseason breakdown available on the main page of fantasydrafthelp.com. Houston first in the league in DSRS, third in defensive yards per play. So that shows you on both the advanced statistics side and the conventional side that they're doing very well, and third and third down defense. Obviously, that only takes you so far. They're 31st in third down offense. So yeah, with that offensive line, that has handicapped them worse than I thought it was going to. And yeah, none of us thought it was going to be a great offensive line coming into the year. I thought they'd be able to scheme around it a little better. I was wrong about that. Houston also second in strength of schedule thus far. I don't think anybody saw that coming out of the AFC South. So they've been a little bit unlucky,
Yeah,
perhaps, in that
looking at
regard.
Houston's schedule. I'm looking at Houston's schedule moving forward, and it's going to be tough, man. Jaguars, they'll get a win at Titans, but
Yeah,
then Bills, Colts, Chiefs.
yeah.
I would say that we really shouldn't expect Houston to be able to overcome that and make their way into the playoffs.
No,
The schedule doesn't look favorable in that regard.
it doesn't. And yet, when you look at it here, maybe that does illustrate a little bit of the luck that's involved with Jacksonville, with the way that they've kind of taken a step up this year, because none of their numbers are necessarily that great that they are showing. As you can see, if you're watching the video along with us here, they're pretty mid at best in a lot of the statistical categories. But Jacksonville seems poised about as well as anybody to nail down that last wild card spot at this point here. I think they're going to be in the running along with it's going to be them, could be the Chargers. I don't think it's going to be the loser of the AFC North. The AFC North is a one spot division here. The AFC East is going to yield to, and I will say this. This is one of these things where, again, FDH Lounge dignitary Ben Chu saying this to me earlier in the season, and I told him what a clip and save this is. He's picking 14-3 for New England based on what they have lined up the rest of the way. Their strength of schedule has been 32nd in the league thus far, and it's going to be pretty soft in the second half of the season as well. And I talked about this as well earlier. When you get into the plethora of MVP candidates in the league this year, and so many of them at quarterback, I think we're going to remember this as one of the great years at quarterback in the history of the league. May leveling up in his second season here to where, again, he's not dealing with an absolute prime Stephon Diggs at this point. I mean, he's not washed up clearly, but he's not what he once was. But he's looking good enough with May there. May is looking like an MVP candidate. And as I've kind of ragged about with you previously on the show here, one of the great jinx positions from college football has been North Carolina quarterback. Drake May, as much as anything else, being impressive for breaking that jinx.
Yeah, Drake's having a great season. He's really doing some. I mean, I've watched a couple of their games, and he looks in complete control of that offense, totally comfortable. He's providing them the leadership, and the Vrabel testosterone has infused into that locker room. And they're in some ways, I think the Pats are still a little bit overachieving, but that might be, just to your point, a function of that 32nd ranked schedule.
Right.
Where you have a team like the Browns got saddled with like the second hardest schedule. So it does matter, right? I mean,
It
strength of
does.
schedule does matter. Who you play certainly helps. You see it in college football. You see it in the NFL. And the Pats are taking advantage right now of, the Dolphins, Jets, all those, poor teams that they've got in the division. They got the win in Buffalo. To me, that was the biggest thing to give them an edge to win that division, which I didn't think that they would be able to do. I mean, again, I had them in second place in that division. And maybe they still end up there, but winning in Buffalo may end up proving the difference maker for them this season in that divisional race.
It may be. And by the way, and this may seem somewhat kind of counterintuitive, but again, all statistics, and we always give credit here for this. Everything aside from the FDH power rankings, courtesy of Pro Football Reference. So go check that out, profootballreference.com. You mentioned the Browns. This might surprise you. 21st in strength of schedule at this point in time here. They're really not on the one extreme or the other. They're closer to the one end than the other. But yeah, 21st. Does that number surprise you?
It's because I think that number has softened as the season's gone on from the preseason, just because of the weakness of the division.
Yeah, I think that's got a
I
lot
think
to do with it.
I think that's what it's done. The division isn't what we thought it would be. The Steelers are in first place. You said it earlier. I mean, this sort of lucky, how are they doing it? Typical Pittsburgh season. Getting ready to lock and load in 9-8 again. Um, and again, a terrible division, and the Steelers lead it. And I've watched a couple of their games, and I don't. They to me look like the kind of team that if they do manage to win the division, it's another one of those first, one round and out, that there's just
Yep.
nothing there and they didn't improve themselves at the trade deadline with any. So I don't see them going anywhere. It'll be 9-8, bounced out of the first round of the playoffs, and Steelers fans losing their minds. That said, they're losing their minds, but at the same time, that's about their ceiling with this roster,
Yep.
right? I mean, Tomlin, to his credit, is getting, that out of this roster, which isn't that great.
No, it's really not. And it's one of those things where, I mean, if ever there's a franchise that lives off of reputation because they do walk their way into the playoffs so often, it is them. But you're right. There's nothing that's impressive. The only difference for Pittsburgh this year is that if they make the playoffs, that humiliating first round exit will be at home because the division has sucked so much. It has basically come back to them to where 9-8 can get you the division title. They'll get humiliated on their own turf. They won't be going to Buffalo or making a trip somewhere else as a wild card. They'll be getting absolutely boned by whoever the 5 seed is, thoroughly so. And
Chiefs.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be the Chiefs rolling into Pittsburgh to slap them around.
Or Chris, what about the Bills? What about the Bills? Very well. Could be the Bills.
Rick, it's probably the Bills or the Chiefs.
I love it. I love it. As a lifelong Pittsburgh hater, I love it that's what their draw is going to be. And that's where you can already wait for a whiny Pittsburgh fan to show up on social media. This is our reward for winning a division. This doesn't seem right.
The team I hate the most is the Ravens, and I want them not to make the playoffs. I want nothing but bad things for them.
I get that entirely, but I think that I don't think they're going to be able to beat Buffalo or Kansas City if it comes down to that in their own stadium. The way that their defense has played this year, no. I mean, it's getting back Lamar Jackson. That smooths over some of the fart smell that's around that team, but not enough of it to be able to beat a quality team there. But I have to say that, again, I was casting about for somebody at the beginning of the year. And as I said at the beginning of the year, it was somewhat similar to the thinking you and I had a year ago when you and I picked Cincinnati to go to the Super Bowl. It was the thought that it was like, Kansas City's probably not going back. I can't quite pick Buffalo or Baltimore until they show they can get the job done. Cincinnati had at least been to the Super Bowl. that was a little bit of my thinking with Houston. It's going to be somebody else. And then again, it's so funny that like 2 years ago, I was like, the AFC South is on the come up. It will surpass the AFC North. I get into this year and I was like, I was wrong on that, or at least premature. Houston's going to be the 1 seed because that division's going to be so easy. Meanwhile, they've had the second hardest strength of schedule thus far in the season. So me being wrong about the division was key to being wrong about Houston as much as anything else. Also a little bit about how bad their offensive line was going to be and how consequential that was going to be. So I say all that to say this, that I was looking for a way to get around one of the other teams here in the AFC, one of the usual suspects, but that's who I'm kind of circling back to at this point. I think you may, in the end, have been right about Buffalo. Kansas City is making a very, very good argument for that. They're looking like actually a better team than they were a year ago, where it was like, what do they have, like 1 or 2 losses in the regular season, but they were sleepwalking the whole way. So it was like they're looking more legit than they were a year ago. So, I mean, whether it be Buffalo or Kansas City, I think they're now once again emerging as the teams to beat, unless Indianapolis can keep it going. The way that they just humiliated themselves against Pittsburgh was not a good look. And it was like, if that's an indicator of what's to come, then I think it's in the end, it's a 2-team race between Buffalo and Kansas City, even though they may both be wild cards. I mean, it could be a 5 seed versus 6 seed AFC championship game, but they right now seem like the teams to beat, unless Indianapolis can reestablish themselves over the next couple of weeks and show that they were for real.
Throw the baby out with the bathwater in Indianapolis just because of the Pittsburgh loss. Again, plenty of good teams have lost in Pittsburgh. It is a hard place to play. Pittsburgh does have good home field there. So again, I'm not prepared yet to say, oh, that's it for the Colts. They're going to fade. To your point, let's see what they do. They made the big bold trades. They went out and got Sauce Gardner. God, I love their new owner. I mean, you talk about an intelligent woman who's dialed in and paying attention.
Right.
She's like literally the opposite of Jimmy Haslam. And I just love her explanations of like, well, I listen to the headset and I take notes because I want to understand everything. Because I want to know that my employees, i.e. the coaches, aren't just blowing sunshine up my ass, right? Like I want to know when we screw up, when we do well, why that is, and what's working and why it isn't, so I can properly assess my personnel. I'm there like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Now, the trick is, as you know, she's got the not the threat, but the balance there. The trick is, don't let the ego get to the point in a year or two of doing this where you think you know more, right? To the
Right.
point where the owner's down on the field trying to call plays, basically.
Right.
Right. So I mean, she's got to know, like, yep, I have to have a limit in what I'm doing here, and so I think that's one thing to watch there. But let's not write off the Colts yet. But you look, the Bills and the Chiefs are the standard bearers in that conference until somebody proves otherwise.
Right.
They've had a couple dud games each. I mean, so far this year, but Buffalo's right there. They're going to challenge the Patriots. The Chiefs. I don't know if the Chiefs can catch the Broncos at this point. It's possible because, like you said, the Broncos have kind of done it with smoke and mirrors so far. So
Yeah.
you do wonder if, like, maybe the Chiefs can actually catch them, possibly, but probably not. They're a solid 2.5, 3 games behind them right now.
Yeah.
That's going to be hard to do. But that, to your point, that is a veteran team, excellent coaches, and experienced. So playing on the road or whatever, they're a 5 seed, a 1 seed. I don't think it's going to matter much for the Chiefs.
Right. Yeah. 2 years ago, when they went to the Super Bowl, I think they had a couple of road games. Certainly the AFC Championship game. I think that was the year they go to Buffalo and Baltimore. I think because that was the Jason Kelsey. I'm going to make a spectacle of myself out here, shirtless with the beer. So yeah. So that was 2 years ago. They've shown they can do it. They can do it again with this team. And yeah. So in looking at it, the other thing with the Colts too. And I echo everything that you're saying. And this is a thing where I'm assuming that this is the case at this point, because like you said, that this Ursay gal, it seems to have a lot of common sense as well as everything else. I assume that there's boundaries being set here and that she's not going to allow herself to be used as a back channel, because it's very, very, very easy, access to the owner on the sidelines here. You get players coming belly aching about stuff like that. That's another thing. That's a clip and save thing right there too. You're going to have to make sure that there's boundaries set, that it's like, hey, you go talk to your coaches. You talk to, if you want to talk to anybody in the front office, you talk to the GM. You don't talk to me about that stuff.
I think she's smart enough to do that, right? I mean, every time I watch an interview with her, I'm more and more impressed with her.
Yes,
Right?
I agree.
You and I both know if that was Jimmy Haslam down on the sidelines with his notebook and his crayons, trying to understand what's going on, he would be arguing with the coaches by halftime, trying to call plays, talking to players. You know what I mean? It would be a freaking mess. But I don't get that sense with her. She seems to have a nice relationship with her players. They seem to like her and respect her. And as long as she understands that she's taking in data that she can use later, and she's not doing anything emotional on the sideline, which she doesn't seem to be,
Right.
it's interesting. And it's interesting if she will continue that approach moving forward, or after this season, like she feels like she's well versed enough so she doesn't, or is it a thing where next year it's like 3 or 4 games that she does it, sort of observing or something like that. I just find it interesting moving forward. And then because you have a lot of ego successful owners, right? And you wonder at what point do others look at what she's doing and go, I want to go do that.
Sure.
Right? I mean, I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for the owners that show up and go, you know what, I can do that too. I want to do that. So can you imagine that clown in Carolina doing that?
Not even close. It's a thing where again, I'm not going to name any names here. I have two friends who are Colts fans, one of whom I'm not going to mention any names here. I got to tell you, when this first started happening, the reaction of both of them was like, she doesn't belong on the sidelines. Women, get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich. So, I think there was a little bit of that kind of backlash in the fan base early on, but winning cures everything, Chris.
But listen, this may all go sideways ultimately for her in Indianapolis because it's very early. It's the honeymoon phase. Who knows, right?
Right.
But I can tell you this: like Browns fans today would love to swap owners.
Absolutely. Yeah. But who wouldn't the Browns fans swap owners with at this point? Like, hey, what's Donald Sterling doing these days? You can.
Despite all our failings, I will not swap owners with the Bengals.
No. But Jimmy Haslam at least spends money. He has no idea what he's doing. Literally no idea what he's doing with it. But the Bengals hamstring themselves with their finances, and again, that's part of why they are where they are right now. A historically bad defense, and again, Amarillo's getting scapegoated coming off of last year. And you see now, I think he's in Indianapolis now, is he not? I believe so. Yeah, I think he's having a good effect this year in his defensive coordinating. Clearly, he was not the problem in Cincinnati. Ownership was / coaching and player development, if you want to add that part of it to it at all. But we can't come out of the AFC without me doing a mea culpa on the shock playoff team I predicted, Las Vegas. Everything has pretty much just fallen apart there, such that a team that could even waste the rookie season of Ashton Genty. Like, you have to be really, really, really bad to make that guy look mid. And that's what they've done. Now, I realize they haven't had Brack Bowers in there a good part of the first half of the season. Last week, I think you saw why he is the best tight end in football right now. But again, Las Vegas proving me wrong. being, I think, big underachievers. I'm going to say that. A lot of people didn't necessarily like their roster as much at the beginning of the season. I did. I'm going to say underachievers, Chris.
Sure, I've never liked Geno Smith. I didn't understand that move. I didn't like their offensive line. Bowers, obviously, it's hard not to love him, but Genty, again, like the player, but looks like the Browns got the better running back in the rookie class at this point. Um, so no, I never liked the roster the way you did. I didn't ever believe in them as being a playoff team. Um, and I would say that, the uh the Pete Carroll tenure that maybe end up being very short of a couple of years before they move on to somebody else.
Yeah, it's been a fiasco in that division, and that's the thing here too. And I ended up picking Denver not to make the playoffs because I thought, look, somebody's going to throw out a short straw being in this division. Well, that turned out not to be the case. Nobody drew the short straw. Las Vegas has not been a quality team this year. The three quality teams in the division looks like are going to make the playoffs. So again, the way that this all ends up, potentially shaking out here, I just think that again, it's setting up for a very, very, very wild end of the season. There was a column that I saw a couple weeks ago, and I can't remember where it was. It was either on CBS Sports or The Ringer, and I know that there's a fair amount of difference between the two, but it was citing the unpredictability of this season and teams like Seattle and Indianapolis rising up, and that by certain metrics, I don't remember the specifics of it, but that this ranks as one of the more unpredictable seasons thus far, much like in 2010 when the thing like, well, Green Bay winning the Super Bowl, that wasn't a surprise. Yeah, but I think they did so as like a 6 seed. Or 1999, which we remember as the anomaly of all time, when the greatest show on turf Rams ended up coming up from out of nowhere. When Kurt Warner gets thrust in because of an injury to Trent Green right off the bat there. So that this is shaping up as one of those anomaly type seasons. But the one anomaly that I would say is when you look at this, like you have to go back to, and this is some real nerd historian stuff here. You've got to go back to probably about 1977 when I think the Colts made the playoffs that year. Like all the teams from when the Colts won the Super Bowl through that year in the 70s were all in contention at midseason. The Colts, the Cowboys, the Steelers, the Dolphins, they were all in it at about that point in time. You can go back like a decade. That's one of the weird things about this season is who's the last team to win the Super Bowl that's not in it right now to some degree? Probably the New York Giants, the second time they won the Super Bowl. New England and Seattle and Philadelphia. I mean, New England's just sort of there at the periphery. But if you're 14-3 and you get home field, sorry, you're in the conversation no matter what. Even if you're playing beyond where you're really at this time. Even if you're over your head, you're still the 1 seed, even if it's 100% schedule based. But that's one of the strange ass things right now. You go down the line, Eagles, Bucks, Rams, Chiefs. You can go back like a decade, and like all of those teams could win the Super Bowl this year conceivably, even if, like I said, the Patriots are at the margins of that conversation. That's a very, very, very unusual thing in the history of the NFL to be sitting here in midseason and have the number of teams that have won in the last decade or so all have a shot of some degree right now.
Roger Goodell's parody Wet Dream, right?
Yeah, basically.
This is the season of them. This is what they want. They want the whole damn league in this thing until as long as they can be.
Mm-hmm.
And again, from a business standpoint, it makes sense. I mean, that's how you get your numbers. That's how you get your attendance. The more parity you have, the more fan bases are engaged. And I would be remiss because we've talked a lot about that in terms of coaching jobs, but we haven't mentioned, and we should just give a brief shout out to the 49ers.
Yeah.
For
Shanahan.
being 6-3
Mm-hmm.
with all the injuries that they've dealt with. That's a hell of a coaching job going on right there.
Yeah. And make no mistake about it. Mac Jones, if he's on the Browns, looks like Bruce Gradkowski right now. Okay. No question about it. But when you're in San Francisco, you're on another level there as far as what you're capable of being as a backup. It really is just amazing. You can plug anybody in there. They'll fit into Shanahan's system. They'll be, more than serviceable. And when you talk about that and their home field that they play on, one of the great rivalries of the 2010s, one of the truly epic rivalries, especially for those couple of years there, early to middle part of the decade, was 49ers and Seahawks. So maybe it's a little bit poetic here. Gun to my head, my Super Bowl prediction at midseason is Seattle goes down to that field and wins their first Super Bowl in a decade over your Buffalo Bills, Chris. That's how I see it playing.
So this is our opportunity to sort of crazy Ivan a little bit, huh?
Sure, yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm, I'm not going to move off of what I said.
Okay.
Uh, I'm going to stick with Packers and Bills.
Okay.
Um, Not for any other reason than just to hold steady.
Okay.
Again, I'm tempted because I had the Rams in the NFC Championship game losing to the Packers. I'm tempted to flip them out and put the Rams in. I
Yeah.
really, really am. Um, and probably push comes to shove right now. I really want to, but then there's part of me that also just wants to, be, what do they say during those stock weirdos during GameStop, right? I want to have diamond hands, right? I want to
Yeah.
I want to hold. Like the Packers haven't been great,
Yeah.
but we're going to get later into this season, and I feel like a younger roster that they have may end up having the less injuries and the energy to sort of push through. So I'm going to hold.
Okay. As somebody who picked the Packers before the season, as did you, and we both did that before the Micah Parsons trade, I certainly see where you're coming from that, and I certainly, and again, Green Bay has played its fair share of epic playoff games in San Francisco over the years, so something fitting about them going out to the Bay Area and winning a Super Bowl as well. Could certainly see that being the case, and again, the one ironclad prediction that I'm going to make that I think I am not going to be wrong about is we complain about this a lot of years. I think like last year, I think like most of the games wild card rounds sucked. You always get at least one game in the second round that does, because like Houston, they got in there last year and it's like, oh, Houston made it through. Okay, they're going to get, butt stomped by somebody. So it's like, I think the number of unwatchable playoff games this year is going to be so much smaller than it usually is. If Pittsburgh wins their division, of course, that's one of them. Them getting stomped, them getting curb stomped by the 5 seed, that's one of them right there. I can't think of hardly too many other games in the first round or potentially in the second round or further out than that where you look at it on paper and it's like, I'm going to watch it because it's the playoffs, but this sucks. I really think that number is going to be at, if not an all-time low, then an all-time low for this era at least.
It's back to the parity.
Mm-hmm.
If there's that much parity, if there's not, if people don't feel like there's a big gap
Mm-hmm.
between the number one seeds and the wild cards,
Mm-hmm.
then I think you're 100% right.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing too, like if New England, I'm not necessarily comparing the two, but the year that Tennessee was the 1 seed in the AFC, and everybody was like, I think that was the year they lost to Cincinnati. Everybody was looking at it like, wait a second, they're the 1 seed? Like, that's what we're going to be doing if New England is the 1 seed in the AFC. If they get there purely off of schedule. But that's going to show you again, just that
Well,
like
if to your point, you
mm-hmm,
mentioned this earlier. If New England somehow ends up as the 1 seed, I don't see anybody. I mean, there'll be some, but no one's picking them to win the Super Bowl.
no, nobody.
No one's going to believe in that 1 seed,
No.
right? People, to your point, are going to point to an inexperienced roster, a young roster, Vrabel's past postseason failures. Um, you know, they'll look at it and say they played a cupcake schedule, and therefore you can't really believe in them. And I think they'd be right. I don't see the Patriots probably winning more than one game in the playoffs.
Well, and to what I said before about that, outside of if Pittsburgh was to win the AFC North, that the number of games that people would consider to be truly unwatchable coming in might be at an all-time low or close to it. That might be the exception right there with the 1 seed of like, oh God, we have to watch the Patriots or play the Bills or the Chiefs in a foregone conclusion game. I know they're at home. I know they're the 1 seed, but come on. That's the funny thing. We could be saying that about the 1 seed, Chris. That shows you that it's a weird year.
It's the conspiracy theorists will tell you that, boy, they've written a great script this year, Rick.
They have indeed. They have indeed. And there have been, the funny thing is, there have been times on Twitter, and I think I sent you a screen cap a couple weeks back where like they had it on Twitter as like news headlines of like, Blue Jays win such and such game to force whatever game in the World Series, but the game wasn't over yet. I've seen that like twice this year of where Twitter has prematurely announced the outcome to games. So somebody's leaking the script there. Much like how, and you said it when we did our live NFL draft coverage in the spring, you said somebody backstage at Lambeau is feeding Wikipedia. Because I kept refreshing Wikipedia. I was just trying to keep up with what was happening, but I ended up getting spoilers in some instances because it was before they said it on TV. And you said, Rick, somebody backstage is feeding Wikipedia. Who's feeding Twitter? Who's feeding the script to Twitter, Chris Galloway, on the outcome of some of these sporting events? We may never know.
Previously said it was Antonio Brown, but
yeah, might be, it might not be.
It's going to be hard for him to do from a jail cell now.
Well, yeah. So much for CT ESPN these days. But as far as it goes with our breakdown here, a pleasure as always, Chris Galloway. Thank you so much for being here for this one, and look forward to convening as we continue to go down the road with the 2025 NFL season. Any other thoughts of yours we didn't get to yet?
Just my last thought is, as much of a Stefanski guy as I was, I've reached the point where I feel like the Browns are going to have to make a coaching change.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't. I wouldn't be hesitating to fade the general manager that much at this point. Certainly ownership, but that's the one thing nobody can do anything about. So,
we could, but that's not happening. So, I think that you're gonna. It becomes an indictment when every quarterback lately just seems to thrive outside of the Browns, right?
Well, yeah. And
it's getting tough. And those people that are saying, did Stefanski not know how to use Deshaun Watson? I swear to God, you now have to question it.
Well,
Bill, I understand. Bill O'Brien had him looking like an MVP.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joe Flacco looked like yesterday's garbage for 4 games. And then he goes to Cincinnati and he's thrown for 470 yards and 5 touchdowns. And so there is a point where you just have to go, okay, the league has figured out Stefanski's system. He's too rigid. He can't move past it. He doesn't seem capable of coaching anything in any other type of system. So I think it's time to move on, right? The league is constantly about adaptation, and he's not. It's not happening.
Well, as far as the fish rotting from the head down, as far as the hopelessness of getting rid of Haslam, truly all things are possible. Because I had joked earlier in the season about what am I going to have to do? Go on the dark web and find somebody to frame Chris Greer for something horrible to get him fired? Well, he got fired without me having to do that, thankfully. And, so that's that, yet another time that I don't have to. Exactly.
How does McDaniel still have a job? Why have they not just pulled the plug on that and get ready for the coaching search for next year?
Well, that's what sucks. He deserves better. I realize everybody wants to pile on him, but I think people are seeing now what I said about the amount of garbage that he had to work with as far as the depth of players on that team there. It was a stars and scrubs team that got scrubbier and less starsier every year as we've gone along here. So I said 4-13 at the beginning of the season. I was a bit of an outlier. Guess what? I don't think they're getting to 4 wins right now. They don't play the Jets 4 times. So, they may not make it to 4 wins. Unfortunately, won't don't suck enough to get Fernando Mendoza. And that is now, I guess that's my last point to make here for this at midseason here. We are now witnessing teams should be in full tankathon mode for Fernando Mendoza. He is the next franchise quarterback coming out in the NFL next year here. If you are a bad team, hope that your team is a big enough pile of turds to be able to get that guy, Chris.
Yeah, he looks good, and looks like the kid at Alabama as well. I'm really liking what I'm seeing out of that kid. I don't know that he'll come out, but I what's his last name? Is it Tyson?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I've really I want to spend more time. I've watched a bunch of Mendoza. I've watched a bunch of Indiana games. As you know, I kind of I have a soft spot for Signetti. I really like his swagger. I like Indiana's story. I've been watching a lot of Indiana games the last 2 years. Last year because of Curtis Rourke. And then, I kind of started to like the team and the coach. So I've been watching a lot of Indiana this year. I really like Mendoza. I like his decision making. I like his leadership. I like his poise. Um, y- but I've liked some of what I've seen out of the Alabama kid, and I want to watch some more of him because he looks like he might also be the real deal.
Very possibly. With Mendoza, the thing I love the most, that's a guy that can make every throw, including the deep ball, which is the most elusive thing in the league. So he's capable of making every throw. And that's one of these things where, again, the fact that there's not a consensus right now that he's the QB1 shows that the football media, I think, has been slow to see the truth in the way that the season has evolved. Or at least, with the Alabama kid here. But the fact that people are still mentioning
I
other
think he's
names.
emerging. I think he's emerging. I think there's a lot of people talking about him. And again, I'm not as big on Sellers at South Carolina like some people
No,
are. I know
he's in a
he's a
bad year.
physical freak, and that he's just he's got all the physical tools.
Yeah.
But I have some concerns there. But um, yeah, I mean Mendoza. I think he's been climbing the ladder um, very quickly in terms of people realizing, like, to your point, leadership, poise, can make all the throws. You saw it when he was at Cal.
Yeah.
They weren't winning, and so nobody paid attention.
Yeah. I mean, he
And
wasn't much on my
so,
radar at Cal. I'll tell you that.
right. So, I mean, I like Mendoza a lot. The problem is that's probably the right. It's the Saints, right? I mean,
Could
they're in the
be.
driver's seat probably for that number one pick, and they'll
Yep.
they'll snag him.
Yeah.
They won't hesitate. So teams like the Dolphins, the Jets, the Browns, they may not be able to suck enough.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's my despair from a Dolphins perspective is they're not going to have a bad enough record, as horrible as they are, to be able to swing that. Man, I'm telling you, if the Saints had somehow or another, if they had moved that pick the same year that the Pelicans moved their pick, and will miss the chance to get AJ DeBanza, the fact that they didn't put a draft protection on that deal with the Hawks, which I remember draft night, Ben Shue and I were sitting there like, what are you doing? So I mean, if the Saints had done it the same year as the Pelicans, then the level of violence that we saw around the time of Hurricane Katrina would be minor in comparison to the revolt that these people would be going through right now. So ultimately, yeah, it's going to be a bright ray of sunshine on the New Orleans sports scene if they are able to get Fernando Mendoza down there and, spite some of the other teams in the world that would like to be able to get him. So we'll see how that plays out. And like I said, continue to track the NFL with you through the end of the season here. Thank you so much for being with us here, as per always, Chris Galloway. And thank you all for joining us for FDH Lounge mini episode 1881.